everybody. Welcome back to Reclaim You. Today, Emily and I are talking about the Barbie movie. Emily saw it a little while ago, right? When did you see it? When it first came out?
It's like the second weekend it came out, I want to say.
Okay,
So 2 weeks ago.
two
Yeah.
weeks ago. Okay. And I
Yeah.
saw it just last week. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear kind of Emily's had some time for it to, I don't know, percolate a little bit and settle into her system. Honestly, I was just telling Emily I had to leave early, so I didn't even see the ending of the movie. I had to run and get my kids, so I missed the end, but I read about it and Emily confirmed what I read was true. So just be interested to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Loved it.
Uh-huh.
I thought it was a great movie. It was very emotional for
Mm,
sure. Like I had all the feels while I was watching it. It
really?
was yeah. Like I noticed I did kind of feel like a kid the whole time. Like I feel
Mm,
like I was just kind of like smiling and laughing and just like so engrossed, but like it definitely brought up a lot as well. Like
yeah.
just a lot of tears, but like not bad tears, like good
Mm-hmm.
tears. Um
Mm-hmm. Like resonant tears, kind of?
yeah,
Okay.
like I felt very seen in
Okay.
that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of stands out?
I feel like it was just very validating.
Mm,
Like just the way that they talked about how hard it is to just exist in the world. I feel like, yeah, like that monologue that I think it's America
America
Ferrera.
Ferrera. Yeah.
Yeah, that her character had. Like it was just I thought it was really powerful and it was like really spot on. So that really got me. And I loved the end as well. Just and I know that you didn't see the end, but
Didn't see the end.
there's a scene where she's kind of like confronted with, do you want to stay here? Or do you want to be a human and like what is her purpose and things like that. And there's a scene where it's supposed to be like the creator of Barbie comes and like
Mhm.
talks with her. And I think that she brings up some interesting things about like the mother daughter relationship. But the thing that
Mm,
really stood out to me is kind of how their interaction represented choosing imperfection and
mm,
and feeling what we feel and like being our authentic self over being like this picture perfect person. And I just thought that they did that in a way that was like really powerful and like very
mhm.
free. And it wasn't what I expected. Like, you hear the Barbie movie and you're like, oh, it's gonna be so fun and like
Uh-huh.
because that's like what it represented to me. And then I went and I was like, wow, like there's so much more here. And like
Hmm.
kind of going along with our topic of reclaiming, like I felt like they like really reclaimed a lot in that movie
Hmm.
and the narrative.
Yeah, on lots of fronts with, of course,
Yeah.
Ken and Barbie, and
Mhm.
I think even Alan, right? Like,
Oh, Alan.
and being constantly just being his authentic self.
I also
Hmm.
loved the scene at the beginning when she's like in the real world at the bus stop. And she sees the older woman and she just makes a comment of like, you're so beautiful. Like I loved
Hmm.
that. I feel like that almost kind of represented like a lot of this is so learned for
Yeah.
us. It's not something that we're born with. It's something that's kind of put on us by the world we live in and diet culture. And I just thought that that was like a really beautiful representation of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the woman's response of like, yeah, I know. I think that's what she said
Yeah.
at least. You're like, yeah, I
Yeah.
know. Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing when you can just stop really giving a fuck about societal
Mhm.
norms and expectations and embrace aging and all that comes with it.
I like how that showcased like it's almost like Barbie was representing like more of like the child like, innocent way of looking at the world, but then it kind of swung the other way of it is possible to get to a point where you're like, you know what? Like, I don't care. Like, I
Hmm.
love who I am and I love the way that I am and I'm enough
Hmm.
or I'm
Absolutely.
enough
I'm
as
enough,
they
as
would
Ken would
say.
say, or the Kens.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, of course, on the internet has caused a lot of like conversation and controversy and things like that. And, interestingly, I went to see it and I was like, I'm just going to be here. And I was telling Emily before we started recording, my lens of viewing the movie was through like having personal space and not being spoken to for like a couple hours. So I was happily eating my Sour Patch Kids and popcorn and like drinking my Pepsi. And I think at points I was paying more attention to the popcorn and the Sour Patch Kids than I was the actual movie. But yeah, I think it was really entertaining. It was entertaining, and it was kind of funny and lighthearted, and so many there's just like so much packed into it, I think. And I could also see, some misses as well, but I think generally they did the job communicating who they wanted to communicate to, the message of really looking at these different systems that are in place that have kept us stuck for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think overall they did a really good job with the messaging. Obviously, yes, there were some misses. I did appreciate like the one scene where they kind of called out like I think Margot Robbie was crying and was talking about like how hard it is, and I appreciated how they called out like
Totally.
you know this is kind of contradictory in and of
Right. Like
itself.
editor's note.
Like she's like the most gorgeous thin white woman, like
Totally.
talking about this, like probably not the voice. I was kind of thinking that at one point, like, is she like the one to be saying this? And then when they called it out, I was like, yes, thank you. I think overall, I did like the representation that they had, and that they were able to kind of call themselves out where they needed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish that they had, and I think I played with Barbies as a kid. I don't necessarily explicitly remember it. I remember having a lot of Barbies. Did we play with them? I'll have to ask my sister. So I don't know about all the like the different Barbies and their names and all of that stuff. But I do wish that, like, yes, they included the one plus size woman as a Barbie in there. And, everyone is still conventionally beautiful, of course, because it's Barbie land, right? But everyone's still conventionally beautiful and with perfect hair and beautifully styled and things like that. So I think there could have been more representation on that front. Okay, you're starting the conversation, and there's room for more.
And I wish that they could have gotten into that a little bit more. But again, like I also recognize it's a movie, and like they can only do so much with like an hour and a half of
totally.
time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's interesting some of, the backlash of, man hating and men hating and all of those things. What do you make of it?
I thought that was interesting as well. And I was wondering like initial reactions as I was walking out of the theater. Like, I wonder what men on the internet are going to say about this movie. And I think it was interesting to see the divide, because I feel like I saw reactions of men who got it and were like, I totally know what they're trying to say, and like I'm totally in support of what they're trying to say, and then just like the people who did not get it. And I know that I was saying to you, right before we hopped on, like my take on that was, I don't think that they were out there trying to bash men in any way. I think that they were just trying to highlight what women and people who identify as women deal with on a daily basis. Like, I think that they were just trying to make that as dramatic as possible to highlight this is the stuff that we deal with every day, and it's really hard and it's really dumb.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the amount of anger that's there for a lot of people who identify as women because rights being taken away and being afraid to walk down the street and, send our kids to school and, all of the things. There's lots of anger there because of the systems that have been put in place, right? The patriarchy exists. And so it feels similar to diet culture, right? Like where there's one extreme, there's going to be anger, there's going to be a swing to the other side of things. And really the settling in the middle is what we need. Right? Not the patriarchy, not the matriarchy, right? Like looking at those systems and how do we kind of come together and settle the score. But all of that to say, of course, there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of people who are like, yes, like down with the man, right? And the men are like, what? What? We didn't do anything. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, you still are a part of the system. And so are we in some ways.
And I liked how they tried to bring that together at the end. Like the only way that we're going to move forward is by coming together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I wish they had given Ken some sort of higher seat than the lower seat, only because it would have been a bit more of like, yes, you're welcome, but like below us. I understand why they did it to mirror, women
Yeah.
and our lives, right? And the same, all of,
Yeah.
I understand it 100%. And in this
Mhm.
like ideal land of like leveling the scores a little bit, yes,
Yeah.
invitation to be included and have a voice, so it's not all just one voice.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. What about Alan? So I didn't know who Alan was. I had to Google it. Did
Yes.
you know who Alan was?
I only knew who Alan was because I saw like a spoiler before
Okay.
I went. So did not know
Okay.
until I went to see the movie. What did you think of Alan?
Well, I didn't know who he was. I was like, what is this? I'm not quite sure. I was like just a
Yeah.
random person who's normal in Barbie land. Like, what is going on? So
Mhm.
I Googled him and he was a discontinued doll, right? Like Ken's sidekick or something like that.
Yeah. Ken's
Um,
buddy. Yeah.
yeah, I had no
Yeah.
idea that Ken even had a buddy. And
Yeah.
also, wasn't he supposed to be like the father of the discontinued pregnant Barbie too?
Yes. Mid.
Yes.
Yes, I did see that.
I saw, I
I
was
did.
like, what?
Yeah.
What did you feel like? I don't know, and this is getting maybe like meta about it, but what was his representation for you in the whole scheme of things?
I think it was kind of one of two things for me. Initially, I think that he was kind of put there to, at least to me, like I read it as he was there to show that and represent the men that do kind of stand with women and kind of support a lot of these issues that are very important to women and people who identify as women. But it was interesting. I like fell down a TikTok rabbit hole when I
Oh,
got
did
home
you?
from that. And I actually saw like a lot of TikTok that gay men were putting out there saying like that they felt very seen in the representation of Alan, just being like, I was like Alan, like I felt
Mm-hmm.
more comfortable with women and girls growing up, and like that was always something that I was told was wrong, and it was nice to kind of see the representation of someone who like that was okay.
Mm-hmm. So like an ally.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And also wanted out, right? Alan wanted out of the
Mhm.
culture, the land, the setup,
Yeah.
whether it was like felt like whether Barbies were in charge or Kens were in charge. Alan was like, I'm like existing in all of this and I want out.
Right. Like I don't want to be with the Kens. Go along with that. Like that's not what feels right for me.
While at the same time embracing who he was throughout the
Yeah.
entire kind of process.
So I think like not only did he, a lot of people who are in like the LGBTQ plus community felt seen by how they represented Alan. But I also think that in general, not only did it like going back to that idea, like Alan represented someone who kind of stands and supports women. I think that Alan also represents that there's more than one way to be a man, which I
Mm-hmm.
also think is a really important narrative and something that people don't talk about enough.
Yeah, I think the whole movie itself represents the binary in lots of ways,
Yeah.
which can also be problematic. But
Hmm.
the binary of the patriarchy versus the matriarchy, the binary
Hmm.
between men and women, accepting yourself and not accepting yourself. And there's so much nuance in between.
I think that people talk about that with, women and people who identify as women a lot. Like there's not one way to be a woman. It's the same thing with men and people who identify as men. Like there's also more than one way to exist as a man.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's talked about as often, and I
Yeah.
think that that leads to a lot of shame there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That permission for men to express their like quote unquote manhood, like being a man in lots of different
Yeah.
ways. Yeah,
Like
flipping
you
the
can,
idea of masculinity on its head and
yeah.
seeing what it really is.
Yeah. Like you can be a man or identify as a man and still have feelings and express your
Mhm.
feelings and cry. And that's okay. And that doesn't make you any less of a man.
Absolutely, and have feminine energy, and women, people who
Totally.
identify as women, having masculine energy because it's all energy and it all exists in all of us. But again, the binary takes us out of that. The patriarchy reinforces that. So again, more reason for lots of angst and anger to be expressed in a movie like this.
Yeah. And I think that like some of the backlash that we were talking about, I think people felt threatened by that.
Mhm. Totally.
When in reality, you're right, it's not black and white. It's not so binary.
I've seen a lot of folks bringing their kids to see the movie, and for me, I mean, not that it's bad to bring your kids to see the movie. I think that it's for us who have experienced so much change in the landscape of the world throughout our lifetimes and who can really resonate with a lot of the pain behind the experiences that they're talking about. Really important to, yeah, just have it out there as like in jest, I think, like they meant the movie to be an extreme of things to show this is what is actually true in the world that we experience day to day.
I also saw in the same TikTok rabbit hole, like there's a lot of older women, particularly, that are going to see the movie. 60s, 70s, 80s. Like there are all
Uh-huh.
these videos of these women either like going alone or like going with their friends. And I thought that that was really
Mhm.
special too. It's kind of appealing to all ages, to all genders, just as a way to kind of take the power back.
Like a little way to reclaim some of that. Yeah, to feel
Yeah.
seen at least
Yeah.
in trying to
Yeah.
reclaim it. Because I think we all know, of course, we know that the Barbie doll is problematic in lots of ways. There's so much bound up in that. We don't even have to talk about it. Everyone knows. I'm sure that women who are older, maybe around when Barbie first came out, it's like this reckoning for them too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that yeah, it's kind of giving words to I'm sure what they felt, but it was never talked about.
Yeah, because especially then, like it couldn't be. There maybe just like a
Absolutely.
knowing that it wasn't right.
I love too. It felt like a way to kind of take back some childhood a little bit, like something that was sticking out to me, like again with the TikTok, but I kept seeing people saying like it feels like this summer between people dressing up to go see the Barbie movie and like trading friendship bracelets at the Taylor Swift concert. Like it's just kind
Uh,
of reclaiming of childhood and like
mm,
doing some of these more frivolous things that people kind of look down on, and we're just kind of like, no, like this is fun and
mm.
I'm gonna do it and I don't care.
Right, like it's okay to play. It's okay to not take
Yeah.
yourself so seriously and have
Yeah.
some community in the process and build community in the process.
That got me too.
Mhm,
Like that was just I love the way that that was framed, and then,
mhm.
being able to see people do that, I think that's so special.
I know that you when on Instagram, when I had asked who saw it, "What did you think?" Everyone that messaged loved it, loved watching it, so that's a really cool thing. So, lots of support for the Barbie movie. So, any final thoughts about the movie?
I think everyone should see the movie. I
Uh-huh.
loved it. I really
Yeah.
did. I think it obviously brings up I think some important social issues and kind of cultural issues that we talked about, but also it's just fun.
Mhm,
And I think it's just a way to kind of have fun, to play. It shows how important that is. So I think everyone should see it.
mhm. Okay, everybody, we will be back next week for another episode. I think Casey's coming back on next week to talk more about toxic workplaces, so that should be fun. Okay, until then, take good care.